The first time Hana Sakamoto lied to her parents, she did it for a sentence. Not a paragraph, not a chapter, just a single sentence she could not shake from her mind. A sentence that had woken her before dawn and paced inside her chest like a nervous sparrow. "I'm going to the library for exam prep," she told the housekeeper, as the chauffeur opened the rear door of the black sedan. But instead of the university library her mother approved of, Hana asked the driver to leave her at a tiny kisaten near Yushima Tenjin Shrine, the kind of place where the coffee tasted like patience and the owner knew when to keep quiet. She ordered a hot milk tea, took out a cheap notebook she'd hidden inside a leather planner and wrote, "I will not marry a name, I will marry a story." She stared at the sentence until the steam from her cup disappeared. It was ridiculous, too big for a 17-year-old girl in a starched uniform from Sishu Girls Academy. It was also true. So she wrote it again, and then again, until it changed shape into a paragraph about a girl who refused to become a vase on a lacquered shelf. At home, the Sakamoto house practiced symmetry. Shoji doors aligned like piano keys. Seasonal flowers stood in austere arrangements, and the family schedule obeyed a metronome no one had ever dared to reset. Her father, Katsumi Sakamoto, was the third-generation chairman of a real estate empire whose offices touched the sky in Minato. Her mother, Reina, sat on charity boards and knew every correct answer to questions about taste. Her grandmother, Oba-sama Chiyoko, lived in a room that smelled like camphor and sea wind, a widow who wore pearls like prayers. To them, Hana was a daughter to be placed carefully, a translucent koi in a porcelain bowl. "Seishu's spring formal will be an excellent chance to introduce you," Reina said over breakfast one morning while the TV murmured weather reports. "Arima Holdings is sending their son, Kento. Your father knows his father from Keio." "Introduce?" Hana echoed, slicing her tamagoyaki too thin. "We are not saying engagement," Katsumi said without looking up from his phone. "Only omiyai, courtesy, consideration. If two rivers flow in the same direction, why build a dam between them?" Hana glanced at Obasama. The old woman set down her tea. "Some dams hold back floods," she said mildly. "Some drown the village." Reina's smile did not move. "Mother." Hana looked at her hands. The sentence inside her chest fluttered. She could feel the edges of it against her ribs. "I have a commitment that evening," she said. "What commitment?" Reina's voice was as smooth as the ceramic of her cup. "The literature club is hosting a reading in Kanda. We invited an editor from a small press." Katsumi put down his phone. "Literature club," he repeated, as if tasting something too sweet. "Hobbies are healthy within reason, but you are not applying to study literature." "No," Hana said, keeping her tone even. "Shonan University. Economics, Reina Brighton." "See? Sensible." Hana swallowed her sentence like a pill she wasn't ready to admit she needed. At school, the spring wind tried to flirt with the sakura a little too early, and the trees answered with a few reckless blossoms that made the courtyard look like it had forgotten math. Hana climbed to the rooftop between classes and scribbled in her notebook. Mei Tanaka found her there, the club's president, with ink on her fingers and ambition on her tongue. "Did you get the email?" Mei asked, breathless. "The Tsubame New Voices contest is open. Unpublished writers under 18. Winner gets a serialization in their monthly magazine." Hana's pen paused. "Serialization?" "Think of it," Mei said, spreading her hands. "A story of your own in print every month. Your name not because of Sakamoto, but because of Hana. Submit something, please." "I don't write anything good," Hana said quickly, which was both false and safe. Mei rolled her eyes. "We have all read your Nothing Good on the anonymous club blog. That piece about the woman who forgives the sea for stealing her father. I cried on the showline and everyone thought my boyfriend broke up with me." Hana laughed, then closed her notebook. "If I submit, it must be with a pen name." "Obviously," Mei said, "you can be Koharu Mizuno or something very tragic." "Please, not tragic," Hana said. "Maybe Hoshino Aki, the star field in autumn." "Right," Mei said, jabbing a finger at her heart. "Or your ribs will keep knocking." That night, Hana opened her laptop after everyone slept. The house exhaled its silence, and the floor heating clicked like a polite metronome. She opened a blank document and wrote until the rice paper window suggested dawn. She wrote about a girl who keeps a secret garden in a city that has no soil, about a grandmother who speaks to her through recipes, about an arranged meeting that feels like a polite trap, about a sentence that wakes her like an emergency. She wrote and cut and wrote and cut, learning that fiction sometimes needs the kind of cruelty that makes love possible. At breakfast, she nodded when her mother described the dress colors that photographed well, when her father recited the Arima family's assets like a minor sutra. When she went to kiss her grandmother's cheek, Obasama's fingers brushed the inside of her wrist. "Ink," the old woman said softly, and smiled like someone who had hidden a rocket under her kimono. Hana submitted the story under the name Hoshinoaki. Then she went to the spring formal in a pale blue dress and let strangers compliment her nails. Kento Arima bowed to her with the precision of someone who had practiced the curvature of his spine in front of a mirror. He was handsome as an advertisement, clean lines, flawless watch, a tie like midnight. His parents watched from across the room as if he were a stock climbing exactly as expected. "Do you enjoy reading?" Hana asked when they sat. "I read what I must," Kento said. "I prefer movement to paper." "What kind of movement?" "Markets," he said. "Games." He tilted his head. "Do you enjoy reading?" "Yes," she answered. "I prefer paper to almost everything." He smiled politely. "My father says literature is like fireworks. Pretty, not useful." "Fireworks frighten dogs," she said before she could catch the words. He blinked. She added quickly, "They have their place." "Ah," he said. "Balance." When the string quartet began its second waltz, he asked her to dance. She said yes because saying no felt like scratching porcelain with a fork. He led decently. She followed because she had been taught how to make everything smooth. 2 days later, a thin envelope arrived in Hana's school mailbox addressed to Hoshinoaki, CO Seishu Girls Academy. She opened it in the courtyard and felt the earth tilt under her shoes. "We are pleased to inform you that The Girl Who Forgave the Sea has won the Tsubame New Voices Award. We would like to discuss serialization in Tsubame Monthly beginning in summer. Please contact us." She looked around at the other girls eating bento, laughing, at teachers hurrying, at the sky pretending to be ordinary. She wanted to run the length of Tokyo and tell the trains to stop until she had caught her breath. Instead, she walked on legs she did not trust to the staff office and asked for the phone in the corner. The editor's voice crackled with a mix of coffee, exhaustion, and joy. "Aki-san, your sentences do not behave like their age." "Hoshino is a pen name," Hana whispered. "My real name." "Do not tell me," the editor interrupted. "At least not yet. When you are ready to own what you are building, you will. For now, keep the star field. It suits the way your characters look at the dark." They set a meeting. They set a timeline. Hana hung up and pressed the receiver to her chest. May burst into tears when she heard. The literature club bought a cheesecake and ate it in the stairwell, fork by fork, as if anyone's footsteps could knock the future out of her hands. Hana kept writing between classes, between piano practice and tea ceremony, between pretending to consider universities her father recommended. At night, her grandmother would tap her room's door with a rhythm that meant permission. Hana opened it, and Obasama would sit on the floor like an ancient queen whose throne was woven from patience. "Read to me," she'd say, and Hana would read the new pages. When she finished, her grandmother would nod as if measuring cloth. "Too many blossom," she'd say. "Cut and show me the branches." Or, "Your character bowed to etiquette and forgot to breathe." Let her breathe. Or simply, "Good, again." On a Sunday afternoon in May, Hana's parents were away at a charity gala, and Hana was in her grandmother's room peeling pears when the door slid open and Katsumi stood there, his face a geometry problem. "Hana," he said, too calm. He held a magazine she'd never seen in his hand. Tsubame Monthly July issue, under the serif title The Girl Who Forgave the Sea by Hoshino Aki. He turned the magazine so she could see the photograph on the contributors page, a silhouette on a rooftop with hair that looked suspiciously like hers. Is there something you wish to tell us? Reina stood behind him, not angry, worse, concerned. We always said you may have hobbies, Hana-chan, but this is public. Hana set down the knife. She wiped her hands on a towel that suddenly required careful folding. I am Hoshino Aki, she said. The sentence that had once been a sparrow took up the whole room. I write. Katsumi's smile was crafted, not felt. And you did not think to discuss this with us, with your family, who loves you and is responsible to the world for what bears our name? You would have said no, Hana said softly. That is not the point, Reina said. The point is trust. The point is choice, Hana answered not softly. She inhaled until the air pressed against the back of her teeth. I do not want to be introduced like a ribbon on a gift. I want to be read. Katsumi flipped the magazine closed with a sound like a lid on a pot. Tsubame Monthly is not Seishu's blog. Your words will stick. They will shape opinion. They will attract eyes we cannot control. My name there is not Sakamoto, Hana said. It is Hoshino. Katsumi looked at Chiyoko. Mother, say something helpful. Chiyoko sipped her tea as if steam-fed bones. When your father forbade me from teaching calligraphy because he needed me to entertain clients' wives, she said, I wrote at night on rice bags and burned the practice sheets so no one would see my disobedience. She held Hana's gaze. Regret is an old woman with cold feet. Reina closed her eyes. Mother, let her publish, Chiyoko said. If the words shame us, we will do what we have always done. Stand up straight. Katsumi put the magazine on the table as if it were contagious. We will discuss this after the Arima dinner, he said, which meant after never. Do not contact the magazine again until then. Hana waited until the door slid shut. Then she leaned her head on her grandmother's shoulder and let the old woman's palm cradle the back of her neck the way it had when she was 3 and had fallen running through puddles. That week, an invitation arrived. Dinner at the Arima home in Azabu. Formal, 8 courses of respect. While the household staff steamed dresses and the driver polished the car until it reflected the sky's confusion, Hana wrote a short story whose first line was a rebellion disguised as a thank you note. She saved the file and printed a copy small enough to hide in her clutch. The Arima's home was a palace that had watched modernity and decided to hire it. A koi pond curated tranquility, an orchid wall curated wealth. Kento greeted them with a bow that belonged to history. His mother, Mrs. Arima, wore a kimono that made the room's light behave. His father, Mr. Arima, shook hands with Katsumi as if they were agreeing to be gods. We are honored, Mrs. Arima said, looking at Hana the way one looks at a painting one plans to buy. And we are grateful, Reina said, looking at the room the way one looks at a room that looks back. They sat. The courses arrived like rehearsed compliments. In between, the men discussed markets as if they were oceans and their ships could never sink. Mrs. Arima asked Hana about flower arrangement and charity. Kento asked if she'd like to see the garden after dessert. She said yes because she was tired of saying no to things that didn't matter. In the lantern-lit path, Kento walked a step ahead and then, suddenly, fell in beside her like a man stepping off a stage. Sakamoto-san, he said quietly, may I be honest? She glanced at him. Please. I read your story, he said, the one in Tsubame Monthly. He smiled, not polite, human. I recognized your shadow immediately. The sentence at the end cut me. The garden breathed. A cicada decided it was August. How? Hana whispered. I read more than my father thinks, he said, and I know what it is to be offered a life like a completed application form. Tick here, here, here. He stopped walking. I don't want to marry a name either, but I also don't want to humiliate our families. It's a very small bridge that crosses both those rivers. Very small, she agreed. We could stand on it, he said. For a while. Does your father know you read? She asked, and he laughed, soft and surprised at himself. If he did, he would ask what profit I gained from paragraph 3. She smiled. Paragraph 3 is the one that refuses to kneel. He looked at her long enough for discomfort to knock and leave. Sakamoto-san, Hana, if we had met in a bookstore, I would have asked for your recommendation. I would have asked for your name. I would have told you mine. He exhaled. But because we met like this, I will ask something else. May I help you protect what matters to you? She stared at the gravel between them. What matters to me is writing, she said. What matters is not being asked to choose between dignity and love. I can't promise a revolution, he said, but I can promise to refuse you nothing that keeps you you. She turned. You speak like a man who writes and hides it. He blushed. I kept a blog at 14. Stock analysis disguised as poetry. It was terrible. They both laughed, and the sound made the garden forget whose house it belonged to.